The green reckonings. The moment I stepped into my family's backyard for Sunday dinner, I could feel the familiar weight of their judgment. My father's eyes narrowed, my mother's lips tightened into a thin line, and my uncle's chuckle was all too familiar. Still playing farmer, I see, he said, nodding toward my worn boots. 7 years ago that comment would have crushed me, today it merely amused me. Something like that, I replied, setting down a simple wooden box wrapped in twine. The family dinner was an exercise in forced civility. They spoke of promotions and stock portfolios, of vacations in exotic locales. When they asked about my little project, I kept my answers simple. It's growing, I said, which only drew skeptical glances. What they didn't know was that my little project had become the most innovative sustainable agriculture operation in 3 states. My company, Terra Nova, had transformed over 5,000 acres of barren land into thriving ecosystems that produced more food per acre than conventional farms, all while restoring the soil and supporting local wildlife. I had left home with nothing but a degree in environmental science, a handful of heirloom seeds, and the sting of my father's words, "You'll starve out there, boy, this isn't a real job." 2 years of living in a trailer on that barren land, working 16-hour days, had tested my resolve. The bank had almost foreclosed, my family hadn't offered a single word of encouragement, but I had something they couldn't understand: vision. I saw not what the land was, but what it could become. My breakthrough came when I stopped fighting nature and started working with it. I designed permaculture systems that mimicked natural ecosystems, creating symbiotic relationships between plants, insects, and animals. The first year was a disaster, the second barely break-even, by the third I was profitable, by the fifth I was revolutionary. Now, as my family finished their meal, I stood up. "I've prepared something for you," I said, opening the wooden box. Inside were seed packets identical to the ones I'd left home with. "What are these?" my father asked, suspicion in his voice. "They're the seeds that started it all," I replied. "The ones you said would never grow." The following weekend, I invited my family to see my farm. When they arrived, I watched their faces as they took in the landscape. What had once been cracked, dry earth was now a tapestry of greens and golds. Chickens scratched in the shade of fruit trees, bees buzzed between native wildflowers, and water catchments reflected the blue sky. "How?" my mother whispered, tears welling in her eyes. "By listening instead of talking," I replied gently. "By respecting nature instead of trying to conquer it." My father remained silent, walking through the rows of vegetables that grew without chemical fertilizers, marveling at the irrigation system that harvested rainwater, and touching the rich, dark soil that had been brought back to life. At the center of the operation stood my office, a modest solar-powered building with walls made of straw bales and a green roof that kept it cool even on the hottest days. Inside, awards lined the walls. The Environmental Innovation Prize, the Sustainable Business of the Year, the Visionary Award from the Agricultural Department. My uncle picked up a brochure from my desk. "Terra Nova," he read aloud. "You built this." "I did," I said. "And I hired 12 local people who couldn't find work elsewhere. We've reduced water usage by 70%, eliminated pesticides completely, and increased biodiversity by 300%. My father finally approached me, his usual sternness replaced by something softer. "I was wrong, son," he said quietly, "dead wrong." I placed a hand on his shoulder. "We all make mistakes," I said. "The important thing is what we learn from them." As we walked back to their car, my mother took my hand. "I'm proud of you," she said, her voice thick with emotion. That night, as I drove back to my home among the trees and streams I had helped create, I realized something profound. The family's mockery hadn't broken me, it had forged me. Their doubt had become the fire that tempered my resolve. Their rejection had pushed me to prove not just to them, but to myself, that dreams worth having are worth fighting for. The greatest revenge isn't in their humiliation, but in my happiness. Not in their failure, but in my success. Not in their silence, but in the knowledge that I had transformed not just land, but hearts.